Well, thank you very much for waiting. That was like a moment of reflection before we even get going. So thank you. You've just watched ChatGPT in action, sorting out all kinds of technical difficulties. We appreciate you being here this afternoon. Happy Friday, happy day 3. What a great session to be having at the end of a Friday afternoon that's been packed with positivity this week. What a better place to begin to see the weekend rolling in with a session on positive leadership. And it starts here, but it can start here too. So do pay attention. Do be ready. We are aiming, I know we've already started late, but we are trying to get 1 or 2 questions in at the end because we've got such great speakers, excellent leaders here today. We have Jean-Philippe Courtois, who is EVP at Microsoft and in charge of National Transformation Partnerships, and also, let me say, a Manpower Group Global Board member. Thank you, Jean-Philippe, for being with us today. Welcome to Amélie, who's head of Human Resources at AXA France, here with a whole wealth of people, transformation, and more background, so plenty of wisdom around leadership that she'll share too. And the other guy at the end of the panel here, you may have already seen today or this week, our Chief Innovation Officer, Head of Digital Factories, Head of Talent Science, you name it. That's why we keep changing the slides. Maybe he thinks he's just been promoted. But welcome all 3 of our leaders here today. I am not going to waste too much time. We're promising you a little empowerment, a lot of positivity, and some really good techniques to take away in your everyday life as an individual, as a manager, or as a leader in your workplace. I'm delighted then to just get going. Jean-Philippe, we love your podcast. If you haven't listened to his Positive Leadership podcast, it's great for dog walking, it's great to get mellow, and it's great to learn. So thank you very much. Tell us a little bit about what positive leadership is to you, and what was the trigger that maybe it wasn't there all along, but it came from somewhere?
Well, thanks for having me and all of us for this exciting discussion. But first of all, a few words about positive leadership. This is a school of thought that has been existing for a couple of decades. It's really at the intersection of positive psychology, neurosciences, and mindfulness coming together. At the end of the day, it's about deeply connecting your inner purpose, your why, taking care of yourself, knowing yourself, growing with others, and hopefully have a positive impact in the world. So when it comes to me, that's like a 10 seconds definition, okay? When it comes to me, probably one of the triggers, I had a few, in my professional life at Microsoft was back in 2015, when, 16 actually exactly, when Satya Nadella, our CEO, tasked me to transform Microsoft Salesforce globally. So we're talking about 35,000 salespeople across 120 subsidiaries in the world. At the time, the company was shifting from one mission to another one. In essence, we were going from being a software company, licensing its software to millions of customers, including Manpower, great customer of Microsoft as well, and AXA, thank you, to becoming digital advisors for digital transformation of our customers. Think about that. It's like a 180 degrees change. So what I realized when I was confronting with that huge change for all of our people, basically on July the 1st, we changed the job of 35,000 people. All job definition change, skill sets change, accreditation change, everything. So the key trigger was, well, if I don't basically upgrade, change my leadership attitude, and ask those guys to transform themselves into the digital advisors, if I don't do it myself, if I'm not leading by example, if I'm not sending new signals of different types of leadership, it's not going to work. So what I decided to do, to pick one quick story, I'll stop there, I decided to be certified on coaching. And that's been actually super important to me because for decades I've been a pretty classical leader, top-down. I was very good at telling, hey, Thomas, this is your good-dos, go and do that. Here's your KPIs. It was pretty efficient. The results were pretty good. I love people too, but I was very much directing people to do things, right? I realized and I learned from someone who's become a good friend of mine, the other MBS, Michael Muguestanier too, not the other MBS visiting France today, who has been writing a wonderful book I would advise to all of you called Coaching Habits. It's a bestseller book on coaching. And he taught me 3 things to become a coach-like leader. 1, it's about being curious. Really curious. Really, really curious. I'll stop there. 2, it's about being lazy. I know it's very provocative, but think about being lazy in a sense that, as a leader, I knew all the responses, right? So when Thomas asking me, hey, JP, I've got this problem, I would say, Thomas, just go and do that. And so I would not give a chance to Thomas to grow and learn how to find new resource and development and get things done. So lazy is not about solving the other's problem, it's to help the person to grow. And the third, and I will stop there, the third piece of that great advice I got to change my leadership style was often. You can do coaching often. It doesn't mean you do coaching all times, by the way. Sometimes that can be very directive to people, to be clear about what needs to be done like tomorrow. It's super clear. But picking the real-time moments to coach people, on the good and the bad, by the way. It's not just about positivity in a naive way. I want to be clear on that, because sometimes people say, oh, positivity is like, oh, nice and rosy. No. You are actually building trust with people so that they can grow when they get a feedback, which is going to be super critical for them to change and do things differently and reinvent themselves.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. That's kind of such a great setup to what we are going to try and cover for the rest of the conversation. So we made you be lazy right at the beginning while you waited, right? Which was a little bit of mindfulness. And but I mean, you know, as a build on some of that, you know, that seeing the light overnight is great for us to begin to think about this. But when you bring this into the workplace, you have to get managers to change, right? And you can guide them and you can coach them, but they bring more with them, right? They have other selves that they have to deal with. In your world of transformation and people, Amélie, tell us a little bit about kind of how you help managers actually move through this path too.
I think that the right combination is really indeed to be focused on the market and the clients as an insurer that we are serving, being well connected with their needs and the evolution of indeed the market, but also more globally the country and the world, and being connected with the needs of our employees. And it means that we have developed over the time care policies, taking into account the strong need of being yourself at work. So indeed, it's about diversity, age, culture, ethnicity, disability, indeed gender. So all the dimensions are extremely important. But more importantly, being one step further, it's about inclusion. And inclusion is really about all these dimensions, but also taking care about the moment in life that matters. Happy moment with parenthood, for example, but also more difficult moment in life, health issues, caregiver, all this moment that needs to be accompanied for managers. And I think that this mix behind being capable to be sensitive, to truly listen, to truly caring about the employees, part of teams are extremely important, multiplied by the need to accompany transformation. And technical IT transformation are about people transformation. So here again, your point about the mindset, being open, curious, reassuring people and guiding them through this path and this way are the key ingredients, including in an hybrid world, to make successfully this kind of transformation.
Amélie, I love that. And, you know, for anybody who's been listening to a number of the sessions that we've had through the course of this week, inclusion and women and returning mothers, working parents, all of those things, to see the other side of somebody else's life is pretty critical if you're going to get the best out of people. So we sound like we have a recipe already, and yet we know that maybe we have a problem. Maybe every leader is not a great leader, Thomas. I think you have a view.
That is true, although when you look at me and mention the word problem, I feel slightly targeted. I'd rather be the solution.
Because you could see as my eyebrows raised, we were getting to a... Well, talk a little bit about what we see the problem is, because then we're going to start pointing to the... Every leader's not a great leader, right?
That is true, and I think, you know, on the upside, there is a lot of room for improvement, because I think there are three fundamental biases that still contaminate our common thinking or discussions around leadership. One is the focus on individuals over the collective good, the system, the organization. So too often we think about leadership as a glorious, heroic, individual career destination. And unfortunately, you can optimize for the individual well-being without, however, bringing positive outcomes for the group. So when I think about positive leadership, I think about the impact that leaders have on others. I think the second one is confusion between intentions and outcomes. I think a lot of the intentions sound good, but just like a great coach isn't somebody who only emphasizes the positive elements that you have and plays to your strengths and helps you become a more exaggerated version of yourself, but that the opposite. I think we should really optimize for outcomes. And that means that some degree of friction, tough love and tension and unpleasant input is necessary to achieve great outcomes. And the final one, I think, is that although some of the foundational elements of leadership are pretty universal, in general, we want leaders who are competent rather than inept, ethical rather than corrupt, and humble rather than arrogant. A lot of it does change from one situation to another. So leadership is still a work in progress. And I go back to Jean-Philippe's point that curiosity is so important, because if you think you know it all, you're probably dead and a liability for others. Whereas if you're open to adapting to the new challenges, then we want you to be in charge. And that, by the way, requires a certain maturity in followers. Too often followers want a leader who pretends he or she knows it all, more likely a he than a she in that situation. And that's why we have so many problems in the world.
All right. Well, you said the word problem last. You
I
started
wanted
with
to
so many
finish with the problems.
positivities. You served it right back to me. So let's just move it on a little bit more then. Jean-Philippe, I've heard you say a lot that talking about great leaders, but are they born or are they created? And maybe we know where it might go, but tell us a little bit more about what you feel.
So definitely, I think history has proven again and again that leadership is about experiences that can shape you, and where you are open enough as a person, individual, whoever you are, whatever is your role, by the way, to learn from the experiences, to grow from it, and to get actually confidence and bring others with you. So I think at the core, and Thomas said the right thing, it's not about the number of people reporting to you. Okay, those are not followers. They are people reporting to you because of P&L and reporting lines and HR organizations. It's about people decide to follow you because, well, you've been inspiring them. You've been showing your vulnerability, authenticity, particularly in the toughest times, because guess what? Everyone has a personal life as much as a professional life. And I must say, my generation, for many decades, I didn't dare asking people, right, what's going on in your life? Not exactly like that, but and really getting to that discussion for mental wellness, to take care of someone, to really understand the problem that she may have today. Is not about she cannot do this job, because she has some other big issues in her life. If you don't touch that, there's no way. So if you go to the core of the positive leadership fundamentals, you've got those three circles that have been defined. You've got me, you, each one of us, is about myself. You've got a second ripple, which is me and others, which we discuss. And then the third one, which to me is super critical for a leader that is shaped, is me and the world. In the first one, it's all about knowing yourself. How hard is that? Look at yourself in the mirror. Being open and soliciting feedback, even what I would call tough love. Okay, tough love means, okay, there's some stories you have to hear on you, which might not be so nice. It's not about the way they are told, it's about the way you grow from that. It's also about the way I think those leaders show that they have a real kind of personal mission. To me, a leader is someone who has decided to be here right now, in this moment, in this company, in this role, and provide the best of himself and herself. And it shows. And I mean, it shows if you are not leading by example, if you are not showing that ingenuity, people are not going to follow you. And then if you do that well, then you have a chance to establish a connection with Thomas and etc. on the bigger purpose you want to accomplish with that person in the context of your company's mission. So anyway, early.
Yeah, and so there's a thread running through. You started with purpose as well, and the followers need to know what the purpose is that they're getting behind, right?
And
the
they need to
clarity of
relate
that.
to it personally, which is not about you imposing your purpose. It's about this purpose making sense for the people in the context of your life and the company you work for, or the organization you are belonging to.
And so here we are at a tech conference, right? So there's a lot of discussion too around digitization and AI and dehumanization, or however we want to look at this. This is some new conversation. How has leadership changed in the last, pre-Viva? We've all been coming here proudly for 7-8 years now. How has leadership changed, Amélie, in the last 10 to 15 years? Is it the same, different?
Same, different. Yes, that's for sure. What I think really is that in a changing world, and especially with the impact of the new technology, the hybrid way of working, with the rise of mental health and all the discussion we just had about care and I would say diversity and inclusion in general, the managers and the leader needs to cultivate even more the social intelligence and the emotional connection. And I think that it's a key ingredient. We were touching on it. Being exemplar is very important. Being role model for leaders, which does not mean being perfect. On the contrary, raising your doubt, sharing your own situations is also a way to fight taboos, but also to make evolve stereotypes. I'm thinking about age, because for the French people, you know that we had some discussions around age and career. So there's a lot of taboos and stereotypes around age, and typically talking about technology, it's really striking to see the feedback employees are giving to us. This kind of example, like, for an old one, you're not so bad with tech. Is it realistic that you change jobs, if you're not good in tech? So all these negative stereotypes that are absolutely false, because we have plenty of very concrete examples about academies, repositioning, people changing their career paths, absolutely capable, to evolve and to embrace new challenges and new piece of life. And it's very interesting because it's really about opening up the discussion, making evolve the mindset, welcoming, questions and fears, and coming back on your point, data. We keep talking about being data-driven, and I think that it's extremely important because thanks to data and also the opportunity to receive feedback from employees, you are, fact-based. And it's fascinating to see the reality of your workforce and the preoccupation and the true progress that you're making on topic. And there's a lot of data you can definitely rely on to check whether or not you're about doing a speech more or less authentically, and the reduce it produced on the workforce, your teams, and the whole company. And people are extremely clear on their feedback. So it's very easy to measure whether or not you retain them, turnover, and especially on a hot market, absenteeism. And there's a lot to do here again around link with mental health and the quality of the leadership and the management on the ground. So there's plenty of ingredients you can really build on to be an authentic and a concrete leader capable to embark people.
So Amélie, I love that. And I just want to stay with you for a moment, because on the point of data, there are many data points, and a really clear one is that 50% of people are excited about what technology might help them do at work, right? So that means there's another half that are fearful, that are intimidated. In terms of leadership and the role of leaders, what do you see as the role of leaders to help the rest of the workforce feel comfortable about either where they are now or where they may need to be in the future?
So first of all, my strong belief is that it's not the first time at all that we are, opening up this topic. And there's, regular phases over the time that we faced all together, the cloud, internet, and many, many others. And the reality is that indeed it raises a lot of questions, but together through discussion, anticipation, and capability to company to really federate and engage. Especially, I've got in mind strategic workforce planning. You know, as head of HR, it's a very powerful tool. Anticipation, the capability to, you know, to build upskilling, reskilling, to accompany people. But here again, all of these are tools. What matters is the mindset and the capability for people to be curious and to test. And most of the time, you know, they find their way, and all the companies are keep evolving over the time, and none of this is new. So that's for sure. ChatGPT, AI, there's a lot of questions in the air, but nobody is capable to predict how big is the magnitude, I would say the level of quickness it will impact the companies and the depth. So I think that we need to indeed equip ourselves, but also to be extremely pragmatic on the way to advance.
Excellent answer. And I'm going to ask a quick one to all three of you before we open this up for some questions from the audience. With all of this pressure and all of this change that's happening faster and faster, what an incredible amount of pressure there is on leaders and managers. And we hear more and more about burnout. What are you doing personally to avoid burnout? Jean-Philippe.
You know, the very first platform for positive leadership is taking care of yourself. As you know, as you get on the plane, when you got severe turbulences, hopefully it doesn't happen, and you got a mask coming down, please listen to what the crew tells you. Put that oxygen mask on your mouth so that you can rescue others people, okay? So taking care of yourself means you start by taking care of your health, physically, emotionally, from a cognitive standpoint. Sleep. It took me years, I must say, I was not good at that, to take care of my sleep. I'm measuring my sleep with that ring. I've got quality of sleep, of depth sleep, etc. Some will do meditation, some will do deep breathing. Some will also make sure that before they go to bed, they actually shut down all the screens, no phone in your room. I discussed all that with Ariane Effington, by the way, on my podcast, so I learned from Ariana as well. And I've been applying some of that because I know that if I want to propagate some positive energy in all the meetings I have tomorrow, when I wake up, I got to be in a great shape, physically, emotionally. Otherwise, you know what happens, right? So that would be my approach.
Thank you. That's good inspiration for the weekend too. Amélie, how about you?
Everything is said. I mean, it's all the right tips that everybody needs to practice.
You just need to do it.
Exactly.
We have to do it, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We know what it is.
Absolutely. What is really important is that we are all very well aware that health is extremely important. But I think that physical health is not enough. Mental health is critical. And I think that it's probably the main message. So find your way, you know, to breathe and to take care of yourself, but here.
And I know AXA, Manpower Group, there are many organizations that are beginning to do much more around mental health first aid as well. So that's a great point. How are you avoiding burnout?
I would say, you know, eat well, sleep even better, drink in moderation, exercise more than you drink, stay away from toxic people, spend time with people who re-energize you, and don't take life or yourself too seriously. You know, we are transient passengers, mostly irrelevant in this world. Try not to destroy the planet in the process. That's about it.
I think we're at about a top 10 tips, really, for all of that. So the number 10 is, and do all of the above as often as you can, right? Maybe, I don't know, is there a sign of a question in the audience for these great leaders? Perfect.
You, Mike.
Hello, and this is a question to all three of you, or whoever wants to answer. Two things, one on gender, which I'm finding more and more present in lots of companies, is that there's a lot of personal information about women that's discussed in promotions, etc. And I think that's because women have a tendency of speaking more that their husband this, and their parents that, and their children that. And it's taken into account, and because you were, Jean-Philippe, talking about personal information and taking into account the person, which in effect is key, but I do hear more and more weak signals that there's more personal information taken into account. I think the objective is good, but to your point, there's a difference between intention, like Thomas was saying, and output, right? And sometimes there's a bias there, and I would have loved to hear about it. My second question is linked to the type of leadership you describe. When you take the example of Vas, the CEO of Novartis, who's promoted subservient leadership for a long time, we're seeing that it's not really delivering and that his board is getting impatient. A lot of people are calling themselves CEOs, chief ecosystem officers, and saying you have to replace command and control by sense and response. It's not working out so well. So I would have loved to hear you as to how do we find the middle ground? Kind of like when people say we have to stop reporting quarterly when you're listed, but actually you can't, right? So I would love to hear you on that.
So you want to start with the first question? I think on the first question, if I understand well the question, on personal information being used for promotion and so on, I think to me, well, number one, to be clear, when I think about diversity, inclusion in a broad sense, beyond gender, actually all kind of diversity, data are important to understand where you are, to have a reality share with everyone, and to know where you want to go. Super important, because without data, I can witness that even within Microsoft, honestly, on gender diversity. When I started a number of years ago in running international, I had probably like 15% of my CEOs of subsidiaries being women. It took me 7 years to get to more than 50%. It was more than personal information, there was data, but it was really about onboarding, grooming, succession planning, and really listening and exposing those female talents in an authentic way with the right support in a company. So I think it takes both, I see. It takes some data, but you've got to be really clear about the outcomes you want to do. It's not just about having a quota, and I'm using that just to impose the things. It's about where you create the condition of success. Do you want to respond to the second question?
Yes, I would love to. So on the second question, look, I think, first of all, where is the evidence that the opposite model is correct? 60 to 70% of workers globally are not engaged. Most people quit their bosses. They join organization but quit their bosses. Burnout, stress, and well-being are worse than they have been in a couple of decades. And about 60 to 70% of managers can be expected to fail. I mean, the status quo is not perfection. We would expect some attempts to succeed and others to be trial and error. Some decisions backfire in the short term, even when they are morally and intellectually correct. So there's data showing that when companies appoint more women to their board of directors, their stock goes down. Why is that? Because perceptions trump reality. And we live in a world where sexism is embedded and ingrained in society. But leadership is fighting that. It is making unpopular decisions, even when there is no ROI. So it's laughable to me when people say, okay, let's go big on ESG, but what's the ROI? That's not ESG. ESG is saving the planet and doing the correct thing. So I think we have to applaud these attempts, even when they fail and when they come at an individual risk. If there is no individual risk, that's just virtue signaling. Yeah, let's have more.
You as leaders have a role to applaud them even more then, because it's hard for a lot of people, I think.
Hey, that was 2 questions. You're going to get a bonus question as a final, just here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and underlining the importance of mental health. But how do you actually can measure mental well-being?
I can take this one. I think that we need to work, and it's what we try to do, with all the ingredients, building on the data as I was mentioning, turnover, absenteeism, all the survey that we are doing around, the feedback people are giving us directly. So there's a lot of data on that front. What for me is really important is the acting piece. So typically we were launching a few months ago specific actions to train all the first lines, meaning the social partners, the HRBPs, the doctors, all the people that are dealing on a day-to-day basis with the employees, to be trained to well understand what mental health is about. first of all, awareness, because it's really important to get to understand what it is about, because it's not that obvious. And secondly, to learn how to behave in case of crisis, or to redirect people, accompany them to, I would say, take the right actions. So we put in place this training. It's a certification, so it's very solid. And we are starting with this phase, and we are opening up to all the managers and employees. So it's within the company, but my personal conviction is that it goes beyond, because it's a social topic. It's I would say, a worldwide society topic, because it's about your kids, your friends, your family, and this topic around mental health touch all of us. And my conviction is that education and being capable to react in a better way, or in an educated way, is also part of the way to improve the working condition and also the connection between all of us.
Thank you for that last question. Thank you to our panel. Thank you for attending. I hope you take a lot of positive leadership away with you this weekend. Have a good one. Thank you.